So we're going to take a wee look at rendering this week. Now, for me, sketching and rendering is probably one of the most important aspects of graphic communication. So it's really important that you're practicing it. It is assessed quite heavily in third year and National 5, but by the time you get up to higher, the number of marks that you get aren't really representative of how important a skill it is. Particularly if you want to go on to do any sort of design-based course, whether that's design and manufacture in school, or you're going on to do product design, architecture, engineering, sketching is really fundamental to that. And to help your sketches really come to life and make them a bit easier to understand, rendering, not colouring in, is really important now. I'm playing about with some of the settings on here. Hopefully this will show up. Now, I've been using this pad for all the videos, so there will be a couple of ghost lines from some of the previous drawings. You should just faintly make out that I've blocked in some geometric shapes, and we're going to go through how to sketch and render on all of these. So once we've got that done, if I play a bit with the focus again, once we've got that done, you should be able to then take these principles forward. Now, the first thing that we need to talk about is your pencil. So when we're using the pencil, it's really important that we have a nice sharp pencil for sketching and rendering. Remember, when you're doing construction lines, holding the pencil towards the end so you get that nice light action. When you're outlining, you're moving further down so you have more control over the pressure. And for rendering, instead of using the tip of the pencil, we're going to be using the edge of the pencil, because we're going to hold the pencil as flat to the page as we can, pushing pressure onto the lead. That will create a gap, and that angle that the pencil sits at is where you're going to take your pencil, hold it in any way you find comfortable, but it's about holding it at that angle. Now, you can't really see that in the video, but if you take your pencil, just put the pencil lead to the paper, you'll get that gap. That's the angle we're holding it at. Now, if you're doing any drawing that you know you're going to be rendering in, you shouldn't be using your outline. Construction line for doing the shape, because you don't want big black outlines. Now, with this pencil here, this is the pencil most of you will probably have at home. This is an HB pencil, or as the Americans call it, it's a number 2. You get pencils that are lighter, and those have an H. So here I have a 2H pencil, and then you get pencils which are darker, and here I have a 4B pencil. So just in the corner, I'm just going to do a line with the 2H, a line with the HB, and a line with the 4B. So you can see you already have that gradated darkness. So if you struggle with being able to light, medium and dark, once we get back into school, we can start experimenting with some of the different grades of pencil. I've asked most people on the Teams page if you've got coloured pencils. If you have, brilliant. I ordered a set of pencils off of Amazon and they arrived the next day. I got these ones, they were £1.50. So those are really good value for money if that's an option for you. If not, just practice with your grayscale, but when you do any assessed piece, it has to be in colour unless otherwise directed. So there's 2 different ways that you can apply different shades. So I'm going to use the HB because that's what most people have got. The first thing that you can do is you can start going from, I'll try to do it here just now, is you can go from having a lot of pressure on your pencil and then lightening it up. Now this takes a wee bit more practice so that you can get that nice, what we call a gradient, where we go from one colour, which is dark, to one colour, which is light. So that is something that if you can develop the practice and you can vary the sort of pressure on your pencil, this is the ideal way to be able to render. If not, a more time consuming way is when you're taking your pencil over. I'm just going to do it as fast as I can, just because I don't want this to be a 30-minute video of me rendering. And what you do is then you start to build up by just going over and over, and each time applying more pencil lead until you can get that darker colour. Now, some colours are easier to render with than others. You'll find dark colours, blues, greens, reds are much easier to render with. Yellows and oranges are a wee bit more difficult. So I have got my cube down here, so if you can just, if I can play about with the focus a wee bit more, that made it worse. You should be able to see that I've got my edges here going backwards. Now, where the light comes from doesn't really matter. Generally what I would do is I would look at the 3 areas that I have to render, and I'd think, right, okay, the darkest one is generally the most effort. So I'm going to make that the smallest area so I don't need to apply too much colour too often. Now on this cuboid we have two options for directions. We have the vertical lines here, or we have the angled lines here. It doesn't matter which one you go for, as long as you keep it going the whole way through. Now generally if you're holding your pencil correctly for rendering here, you shouldn't be able to see too much of the lines coming through. Not using it like we're writing, definitely at an angle. If you're worried about going outside of the lines, what you can do is you can provide a wee barrier here, so using a pencil or using, not a pencil, a ruler, a set square, something that goes on, masking tape. And what I'm going to do is, because this is my darkest side, I'm going to apply as much pressure to this pencil as I can. Because I've got this nice sharp edge that I can hit my pencil across, I'm not worried about going out the lines on this side, and I'm going to just fill that in. Okay, nice dark ones. And this is what's quite difficult about these videos, guys, is normally you would turn the paper, and I can't turn the paper here, so I'm trying to readjust my wrist and it's not easy, so I'm just going to go for it by eye. If I turned the paper, I would just have it going at the same angle here. Right. So I'm applying a dark edge right up to that line. This is where I'm missing my edge here already. Right. So darkening it down, and I want to apply as much colour as I can to that. So putting as much of that lead onto the paper as you can. Okay, nice and dark. Okay. That's me, got my edge. Okay, now it's really up to me where this is the light or the medium side. Again, it doesn't matter, because if this is the darkest side, that implies that the light's coming from this way. So for this one, again, I can either follow the vertical lines or the horizontal lines. So I've done the darkest I can. I'm now going to go the lightest that I can. And again, using the same pencil, I'm putting the finest coat of graphite onto the page. Nice and light. Again, if I could do it with the angle without this camera, I'd be putting a set square on there. This one up here, we consider this number 1 on the scale and this number 5 on the scale. We want this to be number 3, so we want it to be darker than our front face, but lighter than our side face. Now, if you're not sure if you've done it lighter or darker, or done it enough, the best way to do is to kind of like close your eyes about 90% of the way, so you're just looking through your eyelashes, and you should be able to see 3 distinct colours. If you can only see 2, or it all builds into one of them is either not light enough or dark enough. Okay, you want this to be as dramatically different as possible, and one of the design elements that we'll look at, or design principles rather, is that of contrast, and that is opposites. So if this is really dark, this has to be really light. Now, rendering should take longer than the sketch. The sketch should be relatively quick, but you should be spending lots of time making sure that there are no visible lines, no visible overlaps, making sure that it's a nice flat application of colour for your cuboid. Okay. Now, I could spend all day, and I probably would, going over this, but because I'm conscious there's other shapes I want to show you, I am going to do this quite quickly. Now, what I'm doing is I'm taking the colour that I have rendered with, and I'm applying what is called a spider line. So imagine there is a spider on this object. If the spider was to go over this line, would it disappear? Yes, it'd go around the back of the object. Right, so any line there the spider would disappear. You can just thicken that down in the colour that you've rendered with. Okay, you don't want big black lines. This is the idea that the light would just disappear underneath that edge. There we go. So that's me got my cuboid. Now, just to show you on this video, this is the 4B. So that was as dark as I could go with the HB on here. If I just even put the lightest amount of pressure on here, you can see already it's much darker. And that's why if you get a set of technical pencils, which is 2H, 4H, HB, and then going into your B numbers, it's actually just easier just to swap pencil. So you could use a 4B for the dark side, you could use an HB for the top, and you could use a 3H for the lighter surface, and that way you don't need to vary your pencil. So it's almost like changing colour, and you can get that really dark, really light and medium colour going on, which is quite nice. Okay, cylinders. So we know light as it goes away from us it degrades. So with this surface, the bit that's closest to us, we generally do lightest, and then as it gets away from us, darker. If you need to show the light coming from a certain direction, that would be your lightest section, and then it's this gradient going round medium to dark again. So back to my HB, I'm going to just adjust my seating position so I can come in at this a bit better. So here, nice and dark. Okay. I'm going to do a nice dark, so it's almost like banding, so almost like imagine it's got different sections here, and then they're different colours all the way through. So if you've got any parents in the house who don't believe that you're doing higher level work just now, just show them this video, because this video is going to be getting used for the S3, the National 5 and the higher, because the principles are all the same. The only difference I would expect from all three of those levels is just the quality of the final sketch and the final render, but also how quickly you're able to do that, okay? So what you want to do is you want to blend this in, so you just want to keep going over. This is called burnishing. So as you go over it, you don't want to see big streaky lines, and you get used to the pressure as you get more and more practice of this, where you can start to see where you need to add a wee bit more pressure, or where you just need to go over and just blend a wee bit. This is generally where people who wear makeup are a bit more of an advantage, because they'll be practicing their blending a lot more. Don't want big streaky lines. We can get into the highlight now, so I'm just going to apply just a couple of streaks of pencil lead, and then I'm going to start going back dark at this edge again. So really dark at the edges, and then coming up light. Now, if you are using a grayscale pencil or a normal drawing pencil like me, there is a cheat which you can use to blend these in a wee bit more, but it only really works at the end. Right, so nice dark edges, because the light can't go around corners. Okay, and then again your spider line, because it can't come round the bottom. I'll just do that arc in here. And then the top surface is flat. So because it's flat, we just do it like our cube here. Just putting in the spider line at the back, so you can see where I'm going to. And we can just apply one flat colour to the top. Okay. Now, in order to try and get rid of some of these lines, if you're using an HB pencil, using your finger, very lightly you can start to blur some of that in. Okay. It is more of an art technique, but it just uses the oil on your finger, and you put some of that on you, and it starts to blend that in a wee bit more. So if I had an eraser or blue tack, sometimes what you might want to do is just get rid of that edge here, because the light will bounce off it. And it's the same with these. If it's an edge, you can just cheat and just create a tiny wee highlight. And in here. Now ideally you could use blue tack for this, but I don't have any blue tack in the house. I'm not ordering too many things off of Amazon. There we go. So we've got our cylinder, we've got our cuboid. So the next one, taking the same sort of approach, is going to be our sphere. Now a sphere, when you draw it, is just a circle. It's all about how you render it. So I'm going to actually take a colour for this one just now. What will we go for? Let's go for red. Now I'm going to firstly go round the sphere, because it's all one big spider line, and it will hopefully let it show up, whoops, onto the page a bit more. And what you want to do is you want to think about where the light's coming from. So I'm going to have the light coming up here, and I'm going to draw just very lightly a circle, and that's going to be my highlight. And then I'm going to take that circle out a bit more, and I'm doing arcs. And it's going to be like the gradient here. So this is going to start from dark, going right up to light. So with spheres, generally you want to follow the shape of it. Once you get used to using the angle of your pencil, it might look like I'm using it for writing, but I've just got used to the angle that I need to be holding the pencil at to get that full edge in. And you're going to start applying it as dark as you can. So really go as dark as you can, applying as much pressure as you can, but without getting horrible lines. It should be in one big flat colour. Now, if you are rendering in colour, you should never add black to make things darker. So it might get to the stage when I've done this circle, or the sphere rather, my reds are just not differentiated enough. My dark red's not dark enough. I don't add black on the top of it. What I would do is I would look at the colour wheel, which we'll be studying in a wee bit more depth, and I'd be looking at what colours next to it are darker that I'd be allowed to darken this down with, which would probably be more violet. So taking that out, so I want it still to be dark, but not as dark. I want to blend those lines. As you can see, start to see through some of the ghost lines from previous drawings. I do have extra paper underneath this, so it's not picking up the texture of my table. So if you're getting horrible marks from leaning on your kitchen table or your desk or whatever you're doing your drawing on, just a jotter underneath it or some extra paper will help me with that. So this is going to end up being quite a long video because I do not have the technological know-how to speed this up, but I'd rather talk you through all the stages rather than just watching a video which does it really, really quickly. Okay. It starts to speed up as we're needing to put less and less pencil lead onto our object. Now, I've told my guys in the classes this before, but if you're not sure what's wrong with your drawing, best thing to do is to hold it up to a mirror, and it really highlights where you need to put some extra work into it because your brain just isn't used to seeing it that way. So, oops, a wee bit more. And oops, that was a wee bit dark. Starting to get a bit lighter. Until we get to the top bit. And then I'm just going to burnish these lines in ever so slightly. Now, because I had drawn that a wee bit darker, you can still see the outline of it. That's something that you would be able to just, with your blue tack if you've got one, or just very lightly with a rubber, get rid of. And then we can start to see where we're just needing to darken that in a wee bit more. So, nice dark curve. Following a nice gradient through our medium reds up to our lighter reds until we get that highlight at the peak. Okay then, so you're going to use a different colour again. Let's go here. This time I've got another cylinder, so again I'll just outline it here. So very similar to this one, we have to think about what the object's doing. So the object is obviously coming, oops, I didn't realise my paper had moved quite so much. The object is coming towards us here. This is the bit that's closest, so this will be the lightest banding, medium and dark, medium and dark. So again, using your pressure, dark at both ends. Until it gets up to light. So not as many assignments this week. I am looking for those who know who they are to turn in the assignments that are already overdue by 1 week, or in some cases 2 weeks. You can use the drawings that you've done for the first 2 assignments for your rendering if you want to save yourself resketching them out, but practice will make perfect. So the more practice you do of these pictorials, the easier and quicker they will become. It'd be really good if you do have coloured pencils in the house to vary whether you're doing them in the grayscale or in colour. It's really important that we do get some practice of colour, particularly for the National 5 and higher guys, because you will more than likely be specified by the SQA what colours either to use. So for the example, higher were asked to do orange and blue one year. National 5 were asked to make it look like wood, which we'll cover, but we're just looking just now for very basic practicing of our geometric shapes. Okay, so 2 more shapes and then we're done. I appreciate this is quite a long video, but I've got a prism here. And again, it's up to you where you're trying to get these different colours or lights coming from, so it can come in either way, and you just need to make sure that this is a flat surface, so you follow either the vertical or the diagonal lines, and you're just applying a flat colour. But whatever side you choose to do light, it's really important that you then do the complete opposite and really go dark, so that there's that contrast between the two, so that it is an optical illusion that we're creating here, trying to make sure that we can tell the difference. Now it's up to you whether you want to arc this line so that it changes with it, or just keep going at that angle across the full face. For me, I find an angle that's quite comfortable, so I wonder if I can bring the set square in again just now. So you can see I'm not changing the direction, I'm just keeping it going. Nice flat colour using the edge of my pencil. Once we've got the basics of applying flat colours, then we will start looking at materials, how to make things look like plastic, wood, glass, stone. But for most technical renders, we are just looking to apply flat colour to help us give the illusion of a 3D shape. Okay, so it's not like in art where we're spending ages trying to get the right light, and I mean realistically this shape might be lighter and then darker down here. It doesn't matter, we're still getting this idea of 3D-ness. Last shape that I want to talk to you guys is one that has multiple faces, and we'll just go for brown. And so we've got a face here, sort of like an L-shaped block. Line at the side, it's got a hole which is cut out of it. Okay, and we should be able to tell from having just done our topic on pictorials that I've drawn it as an oblique. Okay, I'm going to make the lightest side this front section, so I would very quickly, just because I'm conscious we're coming up to 25 minutes on this video, very quickly give that a light coat of brown and start to see it picking up the shapes that were drawn on top of it. So I don't want any weight of my paper coming through. I want it all to be one flat colour, and I would spend a good couple of minutes just constantly going over this, burnishing those edges, just so that I've got one big flat colour. Okay, so it's just a case of time and patience. Okay, so I've got a nice light surface there. I don't have any other surface that face the same way. These guys are coming from the side, so I'm going to make them my darkest one. Now this face faces the same way as this. It's the same amount of light, so I'm going to do it the same darkness. Again, following one of the out edges, so if this is going up and down, I'm going to go up and down. I'm going to get closer to that line. Now because I'm not using the point of my pencil and I'm using the edge, I can keep going over these lines and they will just all form into one flat colour rather than looking like a bunch of squiggles. But I try to keep my pencil going in the same direction as much as I can. Okay. There we go, nice dark section, and then I'm doing the exact same for down here. As much pressure as I can. Blend, blend, blend. Don't want to have horrible bands of different colours appearing. Okay, so I've got a nice dark section. Now I've just turned my pencil round. That's why I'm starting to get those sharp lines again. Okay, so light, dark. For this one, I want a medium colour. So I want it darker than the front, but not as dark as the sides. Okay, and then same up here. So once I've finished doing that, I might decide that actually I feel that the sides need to be a bit darker, or maybe the top needs to be a bit darker, and it's just a case of going over it until you're happy with it. Okay, now we've got the inside. So we know that this is dark because it's the same way as in here. It's also a hole, so it's going to be much darker because none of the light's getting in at all. Okay. It's really quite dark. And same, this one's going this way, so I need it to be dark. Definitely much darker than the front, a shade darker than the top. And then we start thinking about our spider lines again. What lines, once a spider goes over them, would we not see the spider? And once you do that, it just makes your drawing pop a wee bit more off the page, gives it a defined edge. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is I would like you to copy my page, practicing cuboids, cylinders, spheres, cylinders on their sides, prisms, and then some more complex shapes once you've started to build things up. Once you've done that, then you can go through the assignments that you have already submitted and apply a bit of colour to them. Obviously, I appreciate that some of them will have big black outlines because you were drawing them as line drawings. Please feel free to redraw these if you feel that you would benefit from doing so. This week I would like you to submit an assignment of your best render, the one that you're proudest of. There will be more tasks posted up over the course of the week, but really guys, I want this week to be spent practicing sketching and rendering different pictorial types, different styles of grayscale and colour if that's possible, and let me see how you get on by putting all of your work up into your digital portfolio in the class notebook section, and I will be able to leave you some feedback that way.